Stop with the questions. Celebrate.
And then they say, is Donald Trump an intellectual? Trust me, I'm like a smart person.
Yosemite's one of the wettest we've ever seen from the standpoint of water.
Mike Lindell's a conspiracy.
But you haven't.
Person, woman, man, camera, TV. They said nobody gets it in order. It's actually not that easy, but for me it was easy.
Amazing. He can't sit down. He's got a burning in his butthole. He's got a fire. He's got a flame coming out of his butthole.
Big, massive dumps.
Oh, I have a term for that. I call it corporate communism.
Somebody sent me a thing this morning where they're talking about putting the vaccine into salad dressing.
You see, this is a simple meme that you would find on the internet, but this meme is very real.
You ain't seen nothing yet until you see the flaming butthole.
Putting us on our knees to China.
Now witness the firepower of this fully armed and operational battle station.
Nancy Pelosi's gazpacho police. And why their due process rights are being so flagrantly and horrifically violated.
Stupid.
You idiot.
Of the nation. Waldorf Nation. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the show. It's Tuesday, and it is that awkward time of the year. Yes, the week between Christmas, or I should say the few days between Christmas and New Year's. Where everything feels like a Sunday, but it's not. It's bizarre. But don't worry, we've got a show today, and we've got some shows planned for the week. So you'll got some content here, including fun stuff. Donald Trump's Christmas meltdown, always funny. Judge versus Kari Lake. How did Kari Lake's lawsuit do? Well, we'll give you the details on that. We have the right wing versus Marjorie Greene. That is a fun story. Republican on Republican crime. Always great. We have more updates on George Santos and his lies, his history of lying, which is fun, and lying about his history. And then we have an enraging Amtrak story. That's right. Amtrak. And a little bit of little bit of doo-doo. Fun. Specifically doggy doo. Okay, anyway, with that said, please like and share the stream if you haven't already. With that, let's get to the fun times. All right. Boom. The meltdown. Okay. Over the Christmas holiday, while people were, of course, spending time with loved ones and making merry, the former president of the United States, however, decided to pull out his Festivus poll and aired some grievances. On his Truth Social
Truth Central
platform, Trump began going after, of course, the January 6th committee reports. Here's what he said. The Unselect Committee's January 6th report is a hoax. No different than Russia, and all the other scams. Scam capitalized. The S in scam. That the disinformation-laden Democrats have been planting for years. if I weren't leading by a lot in the polls. Funny enough, to interrupt that thought for a second, what polls are you leading in? There's actually polls that show Ron DeSantis leading over Trump in the Republican primary. Okay, great. But he continues. He said, if I weren't leading by a lot in the polls against both parties. What polls? This continuation of falsehoods and lies would end quickly. And of course, as soon as he, after he says the falsehoods and lies would end, he then obviously puts out his same old falsehoods and lies, saying, I won in 2016, did much better in 2020, rigged. And the radical Marxists don't want to run against me or MAGA in 2024. Are you kidding me? No, that would be the Democrats' dream to run against Donald Trump again. Considering how they won last time, yeah, they want to run against Trump. I don't know if he's noticed, but the entire Democratic Party's political messaging right now is, boy, look at that Trump guy. Oh, you don't want to vote for him. Okay. But hey, Trump delusional 100%. He also said this, funny enough, I had almost nothing to do with January 6th. And then adds, free speech. Well, hold on. I had almost nothing to do with January 6th. Almost nothing? What are you talking about? What is this? I don't know why he put that. I'm not sure. But look, the projection is comical, obviously. But I most enjoy how he punctuated that rant with free speech, free speech. Donald Trump does not know what free speech is. And he also doesn't know that free speech limits the incitement of a riot. Let me give you a court case that is that may be, consequential, because it does show that there is a limit to free speech when it comes to inciting a crowd. In fact, Feiner v. New York noted that the First Amendment actually permits the government to take action against speech when there is a clear and present danger that it will cause a disturbance of the peace. Now, you all have seen the videos, I'm assuming, of January 6th, the rioters going into the Capitol, storming the Capitol, fighting police officers, beating them up in some cases, of course, getting into there, smashing windows, leaving feces all over the hallways. Yeah, that seems to be a disturbance of the peace. So the police can, of course, intervene in that speech. Now, of course, when it came to Donald Trump, who was safely tweeting from a bunker, okay, they couldn't exactly go and arrest him. And by the way, at the time, nobody had thought of it. Still, his tweets seem to have been a good example of inciting this riot, this crowd. Okay. Now, additional court reviews on that case, by the way, found that it's not a violation of free speech to arrest and charge a person who is inciting a crowd to do violence. Now, of course, what actually is considered to be incitement, there is a fine line on this one. That said, another point in this court review is they found that the petitioner of this particular case, this was, I believe, a 1960s, 1970s case, that the petitioner was neither arrested nor convicted for the making or the content of his speech, but for the reaction that it actually engendered. Actually, yeah, it was 1960s. It was a civil rights era. Now, they also said that the police cannot be used as an instrument for the suppression of unpopular views, which is funny how it refers to civil rights as an unpopular view, but it's not. But okay, whatever, I digress. But when the speaker passes the bounds of argument or persuasion and undertakes incitement to riot, the police are not powerless to prevent a breach of that peace. Again, it's very ironic that this was a case that was pursued against a black man. He was arrested, and they found that, okay, he did incite a riot. Now, Donald Trump, as president of the United States at the time, had also incited a riot, but he was not arrested. And now he's claiming free speech. These cases are pretty similar, I would say. But there is that power imbalance. Donald Trump, of course, former president of the United States, and a white man versus a black man. But anyway, okay. Now, Trump, you might be wondering or might be asking, how did Donald Trump incite the rioters on January 6th? Well, the committee specifically honed in on a tweet sent at 1:42 local time on December 18th. So this is one of many different tweets. And again, it fits a pattern of Donald Trump basically saying things that would be considered to be incitement and gearing up this his supporters to do violence on January 6th. Here's the tweet in question. He said, statistically impossible to have lost the 2020 election. Big protest in D.C. on January 6th. Be there. Will be wild. And of course, that also dovetails with Steve Bannon's, what is it? There will be hell to pay, I believe. I for some reason, I'm thinking that I didn't get that quote exact from Bannon. But it was along those lines. Now, an anonymous Twitter employee also later on testified to the committee that they had seen a rise in violent rhetoric following that tweet, in which some of the responses turned openly homicidal. So getting back to that case, Finer, there seems to have been, I don't know, a reaction from Trump's followers that did eventually lead to violence on January 6th. So you could definitely make the case that that tweet specifically, as well as many others leading up to it, were incitement, and incitement is not free speech. Interesting, again, how he capped off that whole rant with free speech. It's almost as if he's expecting this. But there's more. Of course there's more. He's going to continue to truth, you know, because that's what he does. Merry Christmas to everyone, including the radical left Marxists that are trying to destroy our country. The Federal Bureau of Investigation that is illegally coercing and paying social and lamestream media to push for a mentally disabled Democrat over the brilliant, clairvoyant, and USA-loving Donald J. Trump. And of course, the Department of Injustice, which appointed a special, for some reasons this is in quotes, prosecutor who, together with his wife and family, hates, in all caps, Trump. Weirdly, again, there was apostrophes. More than any other person on earth. Love to all. I mean, that is unhinged. Complete and total, just like insanity. It's diarrhea of the mouth. That's what's going on here. It's just, I got all these grievances. I got problems with y'all, and you're going to hear about it. I mean, you know, if you're on
Truth Central.
Only if you're on Truth Central. Look, he's lost his mind. Absolutely lost his mind. I mean, nobody else talks like this. Imagine if I started the show and I was like, you're watching Waldorf Nation with the brilliant, clairvoyant, and most progressive of all, Jeff C. Waldorf. No, you would be like, who is this nut guy? Or this nut bag? This nutcase? This guy isn't, I'm not watching this. This is weird. Nobody talks like that. Except for this guy, Donald Trump. And of course, the strangest thing of all is that you get, you know, right-wingers that tune into this guy and they're like, that's it? That's the guy. That's the guy. Although, not anymore, I suppose. He seems to be losing a lot of support because, well, I mean, at the end of the day, he's a loser. Lost Republicans, you know, the chance at a red wave in the midterms, as well as losing the election. And a lot of the reason that he lost the election in 2020 against Joe Biden is because when he was president, he was an absolute disaster. Just let COVID run wild. But yes, no, he's clairvoyant. You know what? Maybe that explains how he was able to declassify the documents that he stole from the government to take to Mar-a-Lago. I'm so clairvoyant that I was able to use my mind, you see, because I have, mind powers, as well as, what is it, psychokinesis, whatever. I can see ahead of time, clairvoyant, and I can declassify documents with my mind without having to tell anybody, because they'll just know. Mind powers. Mind powers. No, he's got no mind powers. He's barely got a mind. This guy. Wow. Now, one more thing. The idea, and I found this funny, the idea that the special prosecutor hates Donald Trump. Like it's personal? It's absurd. It's absolutely absurd. Look, Jack Smith's doing his job. Of course, if you do your job and that job happens to be investigating whether or not you had done a crime, well, then I guess for Donald Trump, that's personal. But for Jack Smith, he's like, no, this is another job. Like, I've taken down, past presidents before, not in the United States, of course, but in other countries. For example, I think it was Yugoslavia that he had went after. But anyway, went after those officials, did his job. Well, apparently those people tend to take that a little bit personally, and I guess that's the whole deal with Donald Trump right now. Taking it very, very personally, very personally. But Smith, again, has said nothing publicly throughout the entire process so far. Nothing publicly to show that he hates Donald Trump, like has some sort of weird personal vendetta against him. No, it really seems like Donald Trump's got is the one that's got the vendetta. Is making this very, very personally, going after his wife, members of his family, and himself so far for just, again, doing his job, which, by the way, we don't know what Jack Smith has found. If he's found anything, he could come back and say, look, I'm sorry, I didn't find the evidence we're looking for, and I guess I'm not going to refer Trump for prosecution. That could happen. I think it's very unlikely, but it could happen. And then, what's Donald Trump going to say afterwards? Nothing. But the fact that Donald Trump is on the attack shows that he's feeling the pressure, feeling pretty rattled. So, there you go. Rattled indeed. If he's so clairvoyant, why is he always surprised by all the coffee boys that betray him? You know what? Barely knew him, coffee boy. I don't know. I never heard of him before. Well, okay, but he served on your cabinet. Don't know him. Don't know and never talked to him. What about that selfie? Whatever. Coffee boy. Okay. Anyway. You guys are too kind. Let's move on. Let's go to loser Kari Lake. Get in, loser. We're going losing, she says. A judge, let's start that over. A judge has sunk Kari Lake's hopes of overturning her loss in Arizona's gubernatorial election, leaving her once again adrift in a raft of murky legal arguments and very deep conspiracy theories. Now, in a decision that was made on Saturday, Maricopa County Superior Court Judge Peter Thompson, who was appointed by then Republican Governor Jan Brewer, found the court did not find clear and convincing evidence of alleged widespread misconduct that Lake had said affected the result of the 2022 general election. And of course, the reason that they didn't find any clear and convincing evidence is because that evidence does not exist. I know. Shocker, right? But that didn't stop Lake from demanding that she be appointed governor anyway, because who cares about elections? I mean, who cares about who actually won? Just declare yourself the winner anyway. That's how it works now. So her lawyers claim that the problems with ballot printers at some polling places in Maricopa County, which, by the way, is home to more than 60% of Arizona's voters, were evidence themselves of fraud. Oh, see, we had problems, so those problems were obviously man-made and manufactured, as if nothing has ever broken down before. You know how our election infrastructure is old, right? That there's not enough investment by the states and by the federal government in our election process, in our infrastructure. But apparently using the fact that we have old infrastructure, that a lot of our states, again, in the federal government, refuse to fund correctly, using the breakdowns as a result of that as proof of voter fraud, it's super ridiculous. But anyway, another thing that Lake had claimed, or Lake's lawyers, is that problems with ballot printers, the chain of custody for the ballots was broken because they had been taken to an off-site facility where they say that a contractor that had scanned mail ballots to prepare them for processing had actually put their own mail-in ballots into the pile rather than sending them through normal channels, and that the paperwork documenting the transfer of ballots is allegedly missing. Now, the county says, actually, no, that didn't happen. Well, we have all the evidence. They don't have evidence that there was anything wrong. In fact, the whole issue here, and the reason that Kari Lake had lost, is because they didn't have evidence to support their claims. See, there's this thing that where you go to court, you're supposed to provide evidence. If you don't provide evidence, well, then you're not going to win the case. I mean, it seems to be rather simple. But, you know, if you don't care about facts, if you don't care about reality, if all you care about is power, well then, and if you're arrogant to think that you don't need facts anymore because you're living in a fact-free bubble, well then I guess you're going to continue to pursue your nonsense cases. So now, the one thing that Kari Lake had done, instead of presenting evidence, is to call in experts. And of course, those experts, so-called experts, made claims of things that either couldn't be proven or were things that were not nefarious. That's it. And so one witness, for example, who examined ballots on behalf of Kari Lake's campaign, discovered 14 ballots that had 19-inch images of the ballot printed on 20-inch paper. So now the result of that is that the ballots wouldn't be read by a tabulator. So now, okay, there was a printer issue. So the thing is, the county says, well, we found them all. And so what we did is we duplicated them and then, you know, on the correct paper and then ran them and they all counted. So now this witness says, no. They broke it intentionally. And then after they broke it intentionally, they then duplicated the ballots. And so these ballots got counted twice. And those ballots, well, they happened to have gone to my opponent, Katie Hobbs, instead of me. Well, how do you know that all of those ballots were for your opponent and not for you? Again, when you start to ask questions about these conspiracies and really drill into them, you realize there's a lot of holes in them. But if you're not asking questions, if you're not drilling into the details, then you're, led away with the possibility that, oh my God, that's it. They had to have cheated. There's shenanigans going on here. There's issues. Now, that same witness said that a person had changed those printer configurations. This was a tech employee, and they used a shrink to fit feature as part of their troubleshooting of, surprise, surprise, other election-related issues, because, again, our infrastructure is terrible. Now, the county actually said about 1,200 ballots were affected by turning on that shrink to fit, and those ballots were duplicated so that they could be read by a tabulator, but duplicated does not mean doubled. Because those original ballots weren't read by a tabulator, so they tossed those ballots and used the copies in the correct paper. Now, there's another person, a pollster, who then also claimed technical problems at polling places, potentially disfranchised about 25,000 to 40,000 voters. Kari Lake had lost by 17,000. So, assuming that at least 17,000, or roughly about less than half of those ballots, and we're going with the 40,000, right? The top range here. Well, if half of them, or just over half, would have went to Kari Lake, then she would have won. That's their claim. But there's no evidence to prove that 20 to 40,000 people were disenfranchised and that they were all Kari Lake voters, or that even half of them were Kari Lake voters. So again, there's just no evidence to prove their assertions. Could a certain number of people have been disenfranchised that were Kari Lake voters? Yes. Could a number of Katie Hobbs voters have been disenfranchised in the same process as well? Yeah, it's possible. But again, if you want to prove your case in a court of law, to remember, have the entire election be done over, or just as she was asking for, just make me governor already, then you're going to have to present some real evidence there. And sorry, Kari Lake, her team, her lawyers did not present that evidence to the judge. Again, this is all been adjudicated in court. Thompson had also previously dismissed about 8 of the 10 claims. These are the 2 claims that they allowed into the courtroom. Okay, the judge says, present your evidence. If you've got a claim, so let's go. Tell us what you're seeing, what you have. And all of it, again, was just basically hearsay from people who thought I think there might be some shenanigans going on. Okay, and show us your proof. And they didn't have it. Among those claims, by the way, that were dismissed by the court were Lake's allegations that Hobbs, in her capacity as Secretary of State, and the Maricopa County Recorder Stephen Richer, engaged in censorship by flagging social media posts with election misinformation for possible removal by Twitter. He also dismissed her claims of discrimination against Republicans and that mail-in voting procedures were illegal. So, I mean, there it is, right? You had all 10 of those allegations that had gone before a court and were either ruled against or just thrown out for lack of evidence. Again, this is the same thing that has happened, but all the different court challenges that were pushed by Trump's camp as well after the 2020 election. They were defeated for lack of evidence. Conspiracy theories by themselves are not evidence. witnesses claiming errors that do happen, but that were they claim were orchestrated for malicious intent. That's not evidence. If anything, it's evidence that our election infrastructure is in bad need of an upgrade. And the fact that you lost is not evidence. Look, as much as that works on conservative blogs and TV shows, you know, that we have a conspiracy theory and we definitely think that somebody on the inside, you know. Well, by the way, a lot of Republican officials were working as election workers. So, you know, take that for what you will, right? You're just accusing other Republicans for somehow trashing the chances of Kari Lake from becoming governor over, and choosing a Democrat instead, which again wouldn't make sense if you're a Republican, okay, to let the other side win, or not just let the other side win, but to sabotage your own side. No, that doesn't make any sense. Again, when you look into it, it falls apart. But that's all that you would hear in conservative blogs. And if you watch, channels like Newsmax, One America News. Saying those things on those mediums is one thing, but again, they're not going to hold up in court unless you have some sort of evidence, because apparently court has standards. Standards. And I say they're supposed to have standards because, look, let's be honest, right? Conservatives have, targeted the judiciary, and they've made a lot of judicial appointments. And they filled it with judges who they believe would rule on their side. And in some cases they do. And in some cases, as we saw with a lot of Trump appointees, they didn't rule on their side. Because they still, yes, even Trump appointed judges and conservative judges, you still have them that are interested in doing their jobs and not promoting conspiracy theories or ruling without facts. Now, again, you have pretty big cases like Judge Cannon, who obviously are incredibly partisan judges. And again, appointed by Trump. Then again, you also have other judges in many different cases and jurisdictions that are still saying, look, I don't care that I was appointed by Republicans. I'm here to protect the Constitution and serve the Constitution and rule on the facts. And the facts are, you don't have any evidence of this election conspiracy nonsense that you're peddling. And so we're going to rule against you unless you actually do provide it. Okay, so anyway, let's move on. We've got Republican and Republican crime, which is always fun. Those of you who may enjoy watching the right wing tear itself apart are in luck. You're eating good tonight. For the one and only Marjorie Greene is in the proverbial crosshairs of some fellow right-wingers. Now, according to the Daily Beast, over the past week, far-right pundits have been taking shots at the Georgia representative while she was vacationing in Costa Rica. Wait, Costa Rica is not in the United States of America. Marjorie Greene, I thought you were America first. Aren't you vacationing in Texas? I know, it's a ridiculous point. But anyway, first up to go after Marjorie Greene is Ali Alexander on Telegram. Here's what he said about Marjorie Greene. MTG wants to protect McCarthy from being removed if he is elected speaker. There is something so odd about what's going on between McCarthy and MTG. I've only ever seen it once before, seen anything like it. It may be time for me to intervene. Ali Alexander, what are you going to do? What do you mean intervene? That sounds very, very strange. Very strange indeed. What, you gonna call the gazpacho police?
Nancy Pelosi's gazpacho police.
I don't understand. But okay, all right, whatever. Or maybe he'll just. Well, he can't really tweet, can he? Does he even have a Twitter account? I don't know. But he'll certainly post things on Telegram. Now, he also, by the way, one of the things he posted was referring to her as a trailer park hood rat. Not kidding. So now that was in response of her actually hitting back at Lauren Boebert. Now, I showed you the video, I believe it was last week, where Lauren Boebert, was making fun of Marjorie Greene because Marjorie Greene is supporting Kevin McCarthy. The whole fight is just over how they disagree about who's going to lead House Republicans. So on that, right-wing radio host Stu Peters weighed in. Here's what he said. Quote, I see you've stopped talking about dildos and butt plugs. Wow.
Sexual anarchy.
Okay. All right, then.
Tallywhacker.
Okay. Sure. That's fun. Now, in a phone interview with the Daily Beast, Peters then continued to rip into her. He said this. Marjorie is not America First, but regrettably a faker and a liar who raised millions claiming she would impeach Biden. For what? Whatever they can come up with. And now backs the man for speaker who refuses to impeach Biden, he said Friday evening. Again, what are you impeaching Biden for? I don't quite understand. And by the way, what would you hope to accomplish? I mean, it would be nothing more than a political stunt. Which, let's be fair. I mean, Republicans have promised to do all sorts of political stunts once they retake the House. Investigation after investigation, et cetera, et cetera. All right, well, sure. Now, he also referenced the allegation that Greene had an affair with a tantric sex guru ahead of her recent divorce. Look, you see what I'm talking about when I say Republicans are vicious, right? They're vicious to Democrats. They're also vicious to each other. Nothing for them seems to be off the table. It's at some point, and I would almost bet money on this, at some point, one of Marjorie Greene's enemies are going to accuse her of grooming children. Again, nothing's off the table. Now, that said, I generally do not care about the sex lives of others. I really, really don't. I don't care if Marjorie Greene had an affair. I don't care if she had 10 affairs with like 10 tantric sex gurus at one time. Okay? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Now, if you want to go attack her on something, okay, go after her on hypocrisy. And there is plenty of hypocrisy where Marjorie Greene is concerned, all the rhetoric about how, she's a good Christian woman and, she's the weaker member of the weaker sex. Yes, those are her words, where, she basically says, I'm nothing more than a rib woman, and I am, only supposed to serve my husband. Well, now there's ex-husband. There's a little bit of schadenfreude here, and I do enjoy it, but, whatever. That said, Stu Peters, of course, they're going to say some really misogynistic things. He then referred to her as a quote-unquote 2-bit whore. They can't help themselves with the misogyny. They can't do it. They can't not do it. It's part of their DNA. They have to say misogynistic things. Okay, so she likely had an affair. Doesn't matter. Yes, she's guilty of being a hypocrite, along with a lot of the other so-called family values Republicans. Yes. Is this surprising? No, not at all. Not at all. But anyway, there's more. Former Right Side Broadcasting Network host turned failed Republican congressional candidate fun sentence to say. Mike Crispy apparently left him in the oven too long. Suggested that Green was being blackmailed by Kevin McCarthy somehow, for some reason, which he then called the only logical explanation for her fervent support. Quote, all she does is bully and try to discredit. Okay, here's what I think happened. And again, it's all speculative, right? You probably just promised her some committee assignments. I mean, that's it for her support. That's the kind of congressional horse trading that goes on all the time. Now, if you have a problem with that, I'm in agreement with you, right? Yes, support me and I will give you special treatment. Even if you're not qualified to be on the committee, we don't care. You show me loyalty and I will reward you. And look, this happens in Congress. You're dumb if you don't think it doesn't. On both sides, by the way, of course, right? I mean, they have some very strict hierarchies, when it comes to who's going to have what committee chairmanship, or who's going to be, the number 2 Democrat or Republican in the House, et cetera, who's next in line. And that's all internal BS politics, of course, right? So I just think it's one of those, hey, Marjorie, if you support my bid for speaker, then I will give you your committee assignments. But apparently, Mike Crispy, again, his brain seems to be fried, overly crispy, extra crispy, thinks, no, it's a conspiracy theory. Why is everything a conspiracy theory? What? It doesn't make any sense to me. But look, that said, maybe Crispy knows something. But I struggle to imagine what she would be blackmailed for. I don't know. But, okay. Finally, we have Nick Fuentes. Now, Nick Fuentes, of course, also can't help himself. He now refers to Marjorie Taylor Greene as Large Marge. Now, we've all seen Marjorie Greene. What's large about her? What? Like, why you gotta be like that? Why you gotta be fat shaming someone who, by the way, is not fat? Or fat shaming at all. But again, it's Nick Fuentes. He's a terrible person. So, of course, he's going to do this. Again, they can't help themselves. They have to be like the worst people in the world and make me defend someone like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who I do not want to do. I do not want to defend her. Why do you make me do these things? Why? These people, they're not very clever. The Nick Fuenteses of the world. You can't come up with a good nickname, or even like a half-decent nickname. You could make fun of her for all the weird food references she makes. I mean, come on.
Peachtree dish. Nancy Pelosi's gazpacho police.
You could talk about that. How she seems to, talk about fragrance.
And why their due process rights are being so flagrantly and horrifically violated.
Fragrantly. You could be like, okay, Marjorie Taylor Greene's. Apparently, she is very, very focused on food. Like, every time she talks, I don't know, maybe she's hungry. Never do an interview before lunch, apparently. I don't know. And look, there's this, one, I guess, example. Okay, sure. I'm sure people could come up with way better nicknames. But come on, Large Marge? That's a Pee Wee Herman character, by the way. And she doesn't really have much of a, a Pee Wee Herman character vibe to her. But anyway, Fuentes, nonetheless, has encouraged his white nationalist groypers to heckle Greene at campaign events, which I actually don't have an issue with. Okay, you want to heckle somebody, like, that happens, right? In a crowd, all right. Finally, though, we've got Matt Gaetz. Matt Gaetz, who went on a tour with Marjorie Greene. So they went on tour together and spent a bunch of money. Or I should say, lost a bunch of money because This is supposed to be a fundraising tour. They actually spent more than they took in. But anyway, apparently supporting Kevin McCarthy is too much for Matt Gaetz.
And whatever Kevin has promised Marjorie Taylor Greene, I guarantee you this, at the first opportunity, he will zap her faster than you could say Jewish space laser. And I wish that wasn't the case, but it is the conduct and it is the pattern and practice of Kevin McCarthy over years that showcase this.
Look, I love it when they always bring up the space lasers. Remember, that's the thing that she was obviously most famous for. Later on, when they find like, oh, yeah, she talked about forest fires in California being started by Jewish space lasers. Oh, I love it. Oh, Republican crime. Best crime. The most fun crime. But again, when it comes to all of these Republican versus Republican fights, especially over who's going to be speaker and who's supporting who, I just say, let them fight. Let them fight. All right. Go to George Santos. Oops. Republican Representative-elect George Santos is a liar, and he has admitted to being a liar. So now the congressman-elect had admitted on Monday that he made up a few things on his resume. You know, his job history, his education history, and as well as his property ownership. Oh, weird. Now, afterwards, he's like, what are you gonna do about it? So I made them things up. I'm still gonna take office. What are you gonna do? I mean, there's no law that prevents me from taking office, even after I lied to you and to the media, to all of my voters. Oh, there's nothing you could do. Now, the Times writes that Mr. Santos had confirmed some of the key findings of a New York Times investigation into his background, but then later on told the New York Post, and this is a bunch of different interviews that I'm going to be quoting here, he says, quote, "My only sins here are embellishing my resume." Oh, you embellished your resume. Just a little bit. Oh, I mean, don't we all lie about whether or not we've went to college or what jobs that we've had? Again, to get into the details here of this previous report, he had lied about which colleges he graduated from and had lied about working for Citigroup and Goldman Sachs. Now think about that for a minute. If you lied about your work history and your education during an interview, and then you get hired from the job based on, of course, those lies, would you get fired for it? Odds are, yes, I think a lot of people would. And look, I tend to think of elections as kind of like a job interview, you know? You sell your qualifications. And so, again, maybe it doesn't matter to some people where he went to school or where he had worked, but that is part of the package that he tried to sell himself as. Hey, I'm a businessman. I'm educated. I'm an educated businessman, and I'm going to work for you. And then we find out that he's not actually an educated businessman. So now, here's what he said, quote, "I didn't graduate from any institution of higher learning. I'm embarrassed and sorry for having embellished my resume. We do stupid things in life." Ah, yes. Yes, indeed. Lying your way into office, kind of stupid. But not criminal, however. But there is something later on that we'll discuss that might be criminal. That said, he also admitted that he never worked directly for Goldman Sachs or Citigroup, blaming a, quote, poor choice of words for creating the impression that he had. Hey, that's your fault. You know, I mean, you read it wrong. You guys just have poor reading comprehension, thinking that I work for Citigroup and Goldman Sachs. I mean, even though I didn't. Okay. Now, there are other things that he lied about. Again, his property ownership. He claimed that he had a family-owned real estate portfolio filled with 13 properties. Now, he does not, unsurprisingly, which explains why he had the thousands of dollars in unpaid rent. So, yeah. Now, something that might be a little bit more consequential, but not, again, illegal. But, okay, he claims to be, gay. Again, one of his selling points is, I am first openly gay Republican congressman, so the Republican Party couldn't possibly be homophobic. Because look how friendly they are to gay people. I'm young, I'm Latino, I'm gay. Man, I check all those boxes. Okay. Now, that said, we find out later on that he had a failed marriage to a woman. Now, okay, to be fair, if you're gay, you're going to have a failed marriage to a woman. That makes sense. But still, before I get to that, he tells the Post, I dated women in the past. I married a woman. It's personal stuff. I'm okay with my sexuality. People change. Okay, look, to be fair, people do change. And maybe he's not lying about being gay. I don't know. But given everything else he had lied about, I think it's an understandable reaction for you to not trust anything this person had said. At all. At all. Now, he also, by the way, another personal issue that he had lied about is his religion. He's not actually Jewish. According to The Forward, a Jewish publication based in New York City, they reported that Mr. Santos may have misled voters about having Jewish ancestry, claiming that his maternal grandparents were born in Europe and emigrated to Brazil during the Holocaust. Mr. Santos told the Post, quote, I never claimed to be Jewish. Fascinating. I am a Catholic. Because I learned my maternal family had a Jewish background, I said I was Jewish. Oh, see, I'm not actually Jewish. I'm just Jewish. Because I have family converted, but I didn't actually convert. Then you're not Jewish. What? Now, Mr. Santos has repeatedly said that he was religiously Catholic, but is identified as a non-observant Jew. Told the Post that his grandmother had recounted how she converted from Judaism to Catholicism. Okay. Now, there are other issues Santos addressed. He acknowledged that a string of financial difficulties had left him owing thousands to landlords and creditors. Not good. Not good. But then failed to fully explain in the interviews how his fortunes had reversed so significantly that by 2022, he was able to lend $700,000 to his own congressional campaign. That is a decent chunk of money. So you go from being in debt, deeply in debt, to then miraculously turning it around somehow and loaning yourself $700,000? Oh, there's some red flags there. Okay. I don't know what's going on. I don't know. I mean, maybe he was successful, but I don't know. A lot of weirdo red flags. Now, Mr. Santos also firmly denied committing a crime anywhere in the world, anywhere. Even though the Times had uncovered Brazilian court records showing that Mr. Santos had been charged with fraud as a young man after he was caught writing checks with a stolen checkbook. He said, quote, I am not a criminal here. It just made me think of, I'm not a crook. Not here in Brazil or any jurisdiction in the world. Absolutely not. That didn't happen. It happened. However, in the court file that was found, Mr. Santos was identified by his full name, date of birth, as well as by the names of his mother and father that matched. The documents also showed that Mr. Santos had confessed to the crime and was charged, but the case then remains unsolved because authorities were unable to locate him. I wonder if that's because he got the out of there. Gone. He's out. See you later. Now, Mr. Santos had also not fully accounted for his employment during the years that he had claimed that he was advancing on Wall Street. We know he wasn't. In a separate interview with WABC Radio, he confirmed reporting by the Times that he had worked at a call center in Queens in late 2011 and early 2012. So, that said, look, lying like this, it looks bad. So but ultimately, it's terrible PR. Yes, you lied to your voters. You lied during your 2 campaigns. And no one caught on, which I find is kind of bizarre to begin with. How did he get through these 2 campaigns without anybody finding any of this stuff out? But there is something in there that could be criminal. In fact, his financial disclosures, in his financial disclosures, he reported earning millions of dollars from his company, the DeVolder organization. However, according to the investigation, the Times could find no public-facing assets or other property tied to the firm. And Mr. Santos himself had disclosed very little about the operations of his company. So we don't know any detail about what it is, what he does, other than I guess that it's a financial company. He also has no clients, despite the requirement that, candidates list any compensation over $5,000 from a single source. He does not have any listed. If you intentionally omit or misrepresent information on a congressional financial disclosure, that happens to be a federal crime. Whether or not it will be enforced, well, that's another question, really. But it could, if they actually look into it, could come back to, bite you. But as far as everything else, all the other lies, he's not going to lose his seat over it. At least, unless there's a next election and the voters feel sufficiently irritated that they were lied to in such a magnificent fashion. Could face some ethics investigations, but again, I don't know what's going to come out of that. But I am interested, like I said, in where he made all that money, which, where did it come from? Where'd all that money come from? How did you make so much money? Why are you so shady about your company? Do you have any clients? Why did you omit them from your financial disclosures? With somebody that has such a history of lying about simple things, little things, right? You don't think that they're capable of lying about bigger things? Things that could possibly make them money? I mean, you're going to tell me that somebody who's lied with a history of odd jobs, bad debts, and even writing bad checks suddenly came into a bunch of money by completely honest means? You're going to tell me that? No. If you believe them, I got a bridge to sell you. But the last thing here is, once again, harping on the point that this would have been great to know before he had gotten elected. Why didn't you look into it before the election or the campaign before that? Why? Now, his voters, maybe they're not going to care. But maybe if enough of them do, well, that would be interesting come re-election. But again, why didn't the Times or any other publication look into him before? Not his first campaign. It's not his first rodeo. Why didn't his Republican opponents look into him in a primary? I don't know. Maybe they thought he wasn't worth the effort. Maybe they thought he was going to be a long shot. I don't know. What I do know is that this guy lied and continues to lie about everything. And so if you're one of his constituents, if you think he's actually going to represent you and help you out? Fat chance of that. Most likely he's going to be there to help himself in his own wallet. The paper of record, if we could be bothered. Yeah, true. They're too busy putting out terrible opinion pieces by David Brooks. Ugh. But still, they do some good investigations when they feel like it. All right, last story here. Two black women were stranded in Colorado after they were kicked off an Amtrak train over the actions of their service dog. So, look, this is a detailed story, and it's pretty messed up. So let's go through some of the posts here, flagged by Dave New World _2, also known as 50 Shades of Way on Twitter. So he brought attention to it on social media, and here's some of the thread that he posted. He said 2 black women were kicked off an Amtrak because of their emotional support animal had defecated on the train. Okay, so now obviously that sucks. But the women then did what they were supposed to do. They cleaned it up. They cleaned up after their animal. Because again, what are they supposed to do on a train? You can't just stop the train to let the dog out to poop. But what happened, again, afterwards, even though they cleaned it up, and they weren't making a mess, they weren't making a fuss, they weren't doing anything else, well, Amtrak decided to stop the train anyway, after the poo, and then called the cops to then throw the women off the train. As a result, they were, again, these women were trying to go to Chicago for Christmas, and were actually ended up stranded in Grand Junction, Colorado, in the cold. So, Merry Christmas, apparently. I mean, look, why anyone would call the police, why Amtrak would call the police, defies reason. It's not a crime scene, it's poop. Seriously. And it's poo that they had picked up and cleaned up. Meaning, of course, they would have probably brought, the doggy poo bags, right? The doggy waste bags. Yeah. In order to clean up, because you would expect that to happen on a very long train ride. What's the problem? Now, there's video of this incident, and it was caught on TikTok, recorded on TikTok, by a person who, by the way, decided to try to intervene on behalf of these women. And that TikTok account is owned by someone named Bell Skunk. That's the name on TikTok. So let's get to showing that video.
I was a witness to this. Okay. They are mistreating them and the dog. Okay. If they're going to have a policy of letting the dog on a train, the dog, they cleaned up their poop. Give me 1 second, okay? No, this is not right. You're going to just ditch these people in Green River because their little doggy had to take a poo-poo? It's ridiculous. Don't let this ruin your holidays, sweeties. This guy should be ashamed of himself. He should be speaking up, but...
I could never just do what he just did. I could never, ever take the wrong decisions of some Amtrak employees and make it against the law, because they didn't do anything against the law. If Amtrak is going to allow a dog on the train...
Then what's the other side of the story?
That's it.
That's it?
Did you see those ladies upset?
No.
Did you see how they conducted themselves? And they got kicked off a train and stranded in Grand Junction on their way to Chicago for Christmas because of a little dog poop. That guy, that conductor's probably never owned a dog in his life. He hasn't been trained on the policies here. That was against the law. Service animals are allowed on public transportation. And what do you expect a dog to do? Oh, look how harmful that dog is. Gonna just terrorize the train. So basically this one guy that had an upset issue over some dog poop just stalled all of us from being on time.
All right, so now look, you can go and watch the whole thing. I'll put the link in the description, as well as a thread from 50 Shades of Way. You should definitely watch it, because that is infuriating. But again, all credit to, again, Bellskunk. And he jumped to these ladies' defense. He filmed the whole thing. He challenged the cops on this, because it seems like a ridiculous thing to throw someone off, or a couple of people off a train for. And it's the right thing to do, to defend them. So all credit to him. Again, they cleaned up the dog poop. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. Now, the story actually gets worse. It gets worse. This video gets put out. And people responded to it on social media, and they were not happy with Amtrak. And they're like, hey, Amtrak, what are you doing? Like, you're kicking these ladies off for their service dog. Now, the people who get service dogs, by the way, are disabled in some way. Now, whether or not it be an emotional service dog or a service dog, you know, that performs other functions, like helping them see, for example, they should be allowed, or they are allowed by the rules. So what are you doing? Kicking these women off for something that the dog had to do that they ended up cleaning up. It again, didn't make any sense. So now the people were mad, and they started calling out Amtrak on social media. And then what does Amtrak do? Do they put out a statement? Do they, you know, say, okay, we're investigating this? What's going on here? No, they started hiding comments. So they started hiding negative comments about the story. Because of course they did. And, you know, look, that never works. In fact, what they do is they amplify it more in what's basically referred to as the Streisand effect. And so what is the Streisand effect? Basically, if people are aware that you're hiding information from them, or hiding their posts, or hiding something, then they're going to be much more motivated in getting to those videos or those tweets, or etc., and spreading the information and the outrage about it. So now, Dave also, by the way, decided to amplify some negative information about Amtrak executives, since they decided to go and hide posts. In the same thread, he tweeted this: maybe I should start talking about how the 10 highest paid Amtrak executives got 6-figure bonuses in 2021, despite the company's declining revenues. Our federal and state taxes are not meant to subsidize the mistreatment and abandonment of elderly women in the freezing cold. He also posted, meet Stephen Gardner, who was the second highest paid Amtrak executive in 2021. He received a bonus that was nearly 40% of his salary. Wow. Strange how you would receive such a big bonus when your company's not doing well, when they're losing revenue. That's very, very strange how that works out. Very strange indeed. Then he asks, does he know that 2 elderly black women were stranded in the freezing cold on Christmas? He then summarizes by saying, I want Amtrak to know that an incident that touches on race, cops, the elderly, the holidays, the cold, animal welfare, and a quasi-public corporation is a perfect storm for a PR nightmare. But completely ignoring this and just hiding people's replies makes everything 10 times worse. Again, that's the aforementioned strike. And upon closer inspection, he continued, of Amtrak's operation over the years, I can now report that Amtrak is exploiting state and federal taxes while doing unconscionable damage to their labor force by furloughing their own workers in order to hire lower paid contractors with fewer benefits. Again, this is not a surprise. Yeah, I wish, we had a government that would do. Oh, right. We don't, because government tends to favor even semi-public corporate. So look, that said, whoever those ladies are, they are owed a massive apology. I mean, why involve the police at all in this over a service dog? Don't they have like actual crimes to go and investigate and to stop? I mean, again, this is a huge overreaction. Those ladies, watch the entire thing. They weren't violent or combative towards the police or anyone else. They weren't unruly. They weren't just letting the dog poop everywhere and not cleaning it up. No, they cleaned it up. They didn't leave anything for anyone else to deal with. So why? Why were they kicked off? You can speculate that maybe because they were black. I mean, I guess why else would they violate their own service animal rules? And just leave these women? I don't know. I can't say what's in their heart. I can't say that it's 100% racism. But in situations like this, kind of makes you think, what if that's part of it? I don't know. But what I do know is Amtrak has a lot to answer for in this case, because it is a PR nightmare. And so do the police for answering what is a ridiculous call. Anyway, that's all I got today. Fun show. Show indeed. All right. So I'm going to read some super chats if I got them. Here we are. Let's see. No Man Sham, thank you for the very kind of $5. Best weekend of the year for hippies and psychonauts. Fish NYE run at MSG Total Rage Fest. Have fun. That's all I have to say. Have fun with that. Cool. Mary Sleece Cahill, thank you for the very kind $1 super chat. Appreciate that. Koru, thank you for gifting a Waldorf Nation membership on that. Tim Bauman, thank you for the very kind €2. Oh, merry whatever holiday from yes, happy holidays indeed. And Gabby Mathis, thank you very much for the kind $5. And Monty Darno, thank you for the $2 super chat here. Thanks for the Joe Jeff. Love to you all. And yes, I agree. Love to you all. And you're very welcome. Koro says Amtrak was the Karen in this case. Well, specifically the Amtrak employee. Let's see. Yusuf Gina says, even if the profits and finances are in the toilet, the bonuses are still paid to the executives. Yeah. Yeah. Isn't it funny how that works out? And by funny, I mean a disgrace. All right. So Twitch here. Nothing new on Twitch, but thank you for watching. Appreciate that. All right. So with that on Twitch, we'll raid into James from the internet. Haven't done that in a while. With everyone else. Again, thank you all. Have a great evening. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Another fun show. Same time, same place, same ridiculousness that we have today in the news. Love you all. And remember, change begins with you. Good night, nation.
There's insanity in the control room.
Who's got a hammer?
Oh, wow, I'm sorry.
You're kicking me out the door. You're kicking me out the door.
Bitch, move it along.